Look, I have seen a lot of things in my 3 decades serving the Galactic Military Council. I have witnessed Skreelian berserkers tear through reinforced blast doors with their bare claws. I have watched Voltharay shield-bearers hold positions against impossible odds. I have even seen a Quellan diplomat talk their way out of an execution, which, trust me, is more impressive than it sounds. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the absolute comedy show that was about to unfold at the Helix 7 summit. The station's main conference hall was packed, and when I say packed I mean you could barely move without bumping into some species idea of a legendary warrior. The Galactic Military Council had called this summit to discuss new combat protocols, share tactical innovations, and let's be honest, give everyone a chance to flex their military muscles and brag about their greatest champions. Kralvix was doing plenty of flexing. All 4 arms, actually. Now Kralvix was what you might call a substantial 8 feet of solid chromath muscle, with armored plates covering his shoulders that could probably deflect small artillery rounds. His 4 arms were each thicker than my torso, and his species' natural exoskeleton gave him this permanently intimidating look, like he was carved from angry granite. He had fought in the border wars, survived the massacre at Kelvin's Ridge, and personally defeated 17 challengers in ritual combat. The guy was legitimately a walking tank with an attitude problem. He stood near the viewing window, holding a drink that looked comically small in his massive hand, surrounded by other species representatives who were all nodding along to whatever war story he was telling. Probably the one about how he held off an entire battalion with nothing but a broken plasma rifle and sheer stubbornness. He loved that story. Then the doors opened and the human representative walked in. I am not exaggerating when I say every conversation in that room stuttered to a halt, not because of some dramatic entrance, mind you. No, it was the opposite. It was the sheer unexpected ordinariness of it all. Lieutenant Aria Webb stood maybe 5'2", and that might have been generous. Slim build, the kind that made you think she spent more time reading tactical manuals than lifting weights. She wore a standard human military uniform, nothing fancy, with her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked, for lack of a better word, unassuming, like someone who had accidentally wandered into the wrong conference room and was too polite to leave. She carried a datapad under one arm, and held a cup of that terrible station coffee in her other hand. You know the stuff. Tastes like recycled engine coolant mixed with regret. Kralvix noticed her immediately. His 4 eyes widened slightly, and then the corners of his mouth turned up in what I can only describe as barely contained amusement. That, he rumbled, his voice carrying across the entire hall like distant thunder, that is the human champion. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. The Volthari delegate, a 7-foot wall of ceremonial armor named Torvin, tilted his head curiously. Perhaps she is the diplomatic attaché. Surely the human military sent their actual warrior separately. Aria walked calmly to the registration desk, completely unbothered. She tapped her datapad against the scanner, confirmed her credentials, and took a long sip of her terrible coffee. The kind of sip that said she knew exactly what people were thinking and found it mildly entertaining. Kralvix could not help himself. He strode over, all 4 arms crossing over his massive chest, looking down at her like a mountain observing a pebble. I mean no offense, Lieutenant Webb, but are you certain you are in the right place? This summit is for combat veterans, warriors, people who have actually seen battle. The Skreelian observer, a lean predator named Zix, clicked his mandibles in what passed for his species' laughter. Perhaps humans measure their warriors differently. Maybe she is very tall, for a human child. More chuckles. Not mean-spirited, really. More like confused amusement. Like everyone was waiting for the punchline. Aria looked up at Kralvix, her expression perfectly calm. She took another sip of coffee, swallowed and then smiled. A small, knowing smile that somehow made her look even less intimidating. Right place, she said simply. Right person. Kralvix's amusement grew. I see. Well then, welcome, Lieutenant. I am sure you will find the discussions very, educational. She nodded, completely unfazed. I am sure I will. And just like that, she walked past him, found an empty seat near the back and settled in with her coffee and datapad like she was waiting for a particularly boring lecture to start. I watched Kralvix exchange glances with Torvin and Zix. The unspoken question hung in the air. Did the humans seriously send this person? Oh, if only we had known. If only we had any idea what was coming. The formal proceedings did not start for another hour, which meant we had plenty of time for what the summit was really about: ego inflation and competitive storytelling. Kralvix, never one to miss an opportunity, kicked things off with his favorite tale. He positioned himself at the center of the room, all four arms gesturing dramatically as he launched into the story of the Kelvin's Ridge defense. So there I was, he began. Because of course that is how these stories always start. Outnumbered, outgunned, staring down a full Skreelian dreadnought assault force. 50 soldiers, minimum, elite shock troops. The kind that eat fear for breakfast and spit out bones. Zix clicked his mandibles irritably at the Skreelian reference, but did not interrupt. Professional courtesy, or maybe he had heard this story enough times already. Kralvix continued, his voice booming with practiced cadence. My squad was pinned down, communications destroyed, reinforcements 3 hours away, which might as well have been 3 years. The dreadnought commander gave us one chance to surrender. He paused for dramatic effect, his forearms spreading wide. Appreciative rumbles from the crowd. This was good stuff. Classic warrior bravado. I held that position for 2 hours and 17 minutes, took down 53 enemies. Personally, lost 3 arms doing it. He flexed his lower right arm, where the regenerated tissue was still slightly darker than the rest. But we held. We survived, and when reinforcements arrived, the dreadnought forces were already retreating. Applause. Genuine respect. Kralvix was many things, but he was legitimately a decorated war hero. Torvin went next, describing a defensive siege on Volthar Prime, where he and 12 shield-bearers held a choke point against wave after wave of automated war drones. The details were suitably epic. Shields cracking, energy reserves depleting, desperate last stands, the whole package. A Quellan officer, surprisingly, shared a tale about infiltrating an enemy command ship and sabotaging their navigation systems while surrounded by hostile forces. Less about combat, more about nerves of steel and perfect timing. Still impressive. Each story tried to top the previous one. Bigger enemies, worse odds. More dramatic moments of triumph snatched from the jaws of certain death. Kralvix was thoroughly enjoying himself, nodding along to each tale, occasionally interjecting with questions or comments. He was in his element, surrounded by fellow warriors trading stories like currency. Then, perhaps inevitably, his attention drifted back to the small human sitting quietly in the corner, still nursing that awful coffee. Lieutenant Webb, he called out, his tone friendly but dripping with barely concealed condescension. We have heard from the Chromath, the Volthari, the Quellan, even the Skreelian observers. Surely the human military has something to contribute to these proceedings. Some tale of heroism, tactical brilliance, anything. All eyes turned to Aria. She looked up from her datapad, seemingly surprised to be addressed. Kralvix pressed on, grinning now. I mean, no offense intended, but you look like you would blow away in a strong wind, little one. What could humans possibly bring to a discussion about combat among the galaxy's finest warriors? A few uncomfortable chuckles. Even Torvin looked a bit embarrassed at the directness of the comment. Aria set down her datapad slowly. She took one more sip of coffee, swallowed, and then looked directly at Kralvix with that same small, knowing smile. Well, she said, her voice calm and measured. That depends. Do any of you want to hear about Tuesday? Silence. Kralvix blinked, all 4 eyes showing confusion. Tuesday. What is Tuesday? Not what? Aria corrected gently. When? Last Tuesday, specifically. Or well, it was Tuesday for me. Station time zones get weird when you are posted at the outer colonies. Zix leaned forward, mandibles twitching with curiosity. And what happened last Tuesday, Lieutenant? Aria's smile widened just a fraction. I stood against a Titan-class war machine. Designation Obliterator-Nine. You could have heard a pin drop in that conference hall. Kralvix's grin faltered. Just a bit. A Titan class? You mean you witnessed one? Survived an encounter? No, Aria said, still smiling. I mean, I stood against it, personally. Just me and Obliterator-Nine. Tuesday afternoon. Does anyone want to hear that story? Or should we continue discussing your impressive 53 kills? The temperature in the room seemed to drop about 10 degrees. Oh, this was going to be good. Aria stood up, coffee cup still in hand, and walked to the center of the room. Not because she needed to be dramatic about it, but because, well, if you are going to tell a story like this, you might as well own the space. Her voice changed. Not louder, exactly, but different, more focused. The kind of voice that made you lean in to listen even if you did not want to. Outpost Meridian, she began, is, or was, I should say, a small mining colony on the edge of Sector 12. Nice place, actually. Quiet. The kind of posting where the biggest excitement is usually someone finding a particularly shiny mineral deposit or the cafeteria running out of decent coffee. She glanced at her cup with mild disgust, which, trust me, is a tragedy when it happens. A few nervous chuckles. The mood was shifting, and everyone could feel it. 300 civilians. Aria continued. Miners, engineers, support staff, a few families. Kids, even. The colony had been running for about 8 years without major incident. Light defense grid, nothing fancy. Couple of automated turrets, basic shield generators, enough to handle pirates or wildlife. Standard outer colony setup. She walked slowly as she spoke, her eyes distant like she was watching the memory play out in front of her. I was the only military personnel stationed there. Just me. It was supposed to be a quiet assignment, a place to decompress after some, heavier deployments. Mostly I filed reports, ran drills that nobody took seriously, and tried to convince the kitchen staff that their coffee was a crime against humanity. Torvin shifted in his seat, his armor plates clicking softly. A peaceful assignment then. Very peaceful, Aria agreed. Right up until the sensors started screaming. Her voice dropped slightly, and I swear everyone in that room unconsciously leaned forward. It was a Tuesday station time, around 1400 hours. I was in the command center, halfway through a absolutely riveting equipment maintenance report, when the proximity alarms went off. Long-range sensors picked up something approaching from deep space. Spig's signature moving fast. She paused, taking another sip of coffee. At first, we thought it was an asteroid. Happens sometimes in that sector. You get rocks knocked loose from the belt, they drift toward inhabited space, you track them and either redirect or blow them up if they get too close. Standard procedure. Kralovic's 4 arms had unconsciously uncrossed. He was listening now, really listening. But then, Aria continued. The trajectory analysis came back, and the thing about asteroids is, they do not move with purpose. They do not adjust their course. They definitely do not accelerate toward populated colonies with intent. Zix's mandibles stopped clicking. His predator eyes were fixed on Aria. So we recalibrated the sensors, ran a deep scan, got a better look at what was coming toward us. Aria's smile had completely vanished now. 300 feet tall, autonomous, ancient tech, energy signature off the charts. The database took about 3 seconds to match it to known threats. She looked around the room, making eye contact with each delegate in turn. Titan-class war machine. Designation Obliterator-Nine. I heard someone's drink hit the floor. Might have been mine, actually. Hard to remember. A Quellan observer in the back, one who had not spoken all day, suddenly found his voice. That is impossible. Obliterator-Nine was last seen in the Kessler Nebula, 70 years ago. It destroyed an entire fleet, then vanished into deep space. It was declared dormant, possibly deactivated. Yeah. Well, Aria said dryly. It woke up, and it was in a mood. Kralvix's expression had gone from amused to something else entirely. Horror? Respect? Both. Lieutenant, if a Titan class appeared at your colony, then the evacuation protocols, surely you initiated. Evacuation protocols for a Titan class encounter are pretty straightforward, Aria interrupted. Run, pray, die anyway. In that order. Titans move faster than most evacuation ships. They have scanning ranges that make hiding pointless, and they were designed by the architects specifically to ensure total annihilation of their targets. She set her coffee cup down on a nearby table, her hands now free to gesture as she spoke. Obliterator-Nine was 2 hours away from Outpost Meridian. We had 300 civilians, most of whom had never seen real combat. We had a handful of cargo shuttles that could maybe carry 50 people if we packed them like cargo. And we had a defense grid that was designed to handle pirates, not walking apocalypses. The room was absolutely silent now. Every warrior, every soldier, every battle-hardened veteran was hanging on her words. So Aria said quietly, I had a choice to make. Torvin's voice was barely a whisper. What did you do? Aria's small smile returned. Just a hint of it. Well, like I said, it was Tuesday, and I had plans that evening, so I decided that Obliterator-Nine was going to have to reschedule. Aria paused, glancing around the room with an expression of mock concern. Now, just in case anyone here does not know what a Titan-class war machine is, let me provide some context. You know, for educational purposes. The sarcasm was thick enough to cut with a knife. Everyone in that room knew exactly what Titans were. You do not serve in galactic military without learning about them, usually during the part of training titled Things That Will Absolutely Kill You and Everyone You Love. But Aria was on a roll now, and nobody was about to interrupt her. Titans, she said, pacing slowly, are autonomous war machines built by the architects. You know, that incredibly advanced species that went extinct about 10,000 years ago, the ones who left behind technology we still cannot fully understand. Yeah, those guys. Real overachievers. A few nervous laughs. Very nervous. Titans stand approximately 300 feet tall. They are mobile fortresses with enough firepower to level cities, plural, multiple cities. In an afternoon, if they are feeling efficient, she held up one finger. Plasma cannons mounted on each arm that can crack planetary crust. Not exaggerating. Actual geological damage. Second finger. Shield generators that make our best military-grade barriers look like wet tissue paper. I have read reports of full orbital bombardments that barely scratched their paint jobs. Third finger. The autonomous AI systems with tactical processing that makes our best war computers look like children counting on their fingers. They learn, they adapt, they do not get tired, and they do not stop. Fourth finger. And they were specifically designed, programmed, and deployed by the architects for one single purpose: total annihilation of designated targets. She lowered her hand, her expression darkening. In the entire recorded history of galactic civilization, Titans have been encountered exactly 7 times. 7. And in every single one of those encounters the outcome was the same: complete and utter destruction of everything in their path. Fleets, colonies, defensive stations, gone, wiped out. Nothing left but debris and horror stories. Zix's mandibles were completely still now. The Kelrath defense fleet they encountered one near the Terminus cluster, 200 ships. They threw everything they had at it, and it destroyed them all in 47 minutes. Aria finished. I have read the reports. Well, the fragments that survived. Most of the records were lost when the Titan vaporized the command carrier. Torvin shifted uncomfortably in his massive armor. The standard protocol for Titan encounters is immediate evacuation and distress calls to all nearby military forces. Right, Aria said, nodding. Evacuate and pray someone shows up with enough firepower to maybe slow it down long enough for people to get away. Except here is the fun part. Titans move faster than most evacuation vessels. They have sensor ranges measured in astronomical units, and their targeting systems can track and eliminate fleeing ships like someone swatting flies. She picked up her coffee cup again, realized it was empty, and frowned at it like it had personally betrayed her. So, evacuation is really just, you know, a thing you do so you can tell yourself you tried. It makes people feel better before they die horribly. Kralvix found his voice, though it lacked all of his earlier confidence. Then, Lieutenant, your colony, Outpost Meridian. It must have been, surely it was destroyed. You survived because you evacuated early. Before the Titan arrived. Aria looked at him, her eyes sharp and clear. Oh, Obliterator-Nine definitely arrived. Right on schedule. 2 hours almost to the minute. Then how? Well, Aria interrupted, that small smile creeping back onto her face. That is the thing, Kralvix. The colony was not destroyed. 300 civilians, all alive, buildings intact. Mining operations still functional. I checked in with them this morning actually. They are doing fine. Complaining about the coffee. Mostly. Dead silence. Every single warrior in that room was staring at her like she had just announced she could breathe in vacuum. That is impossible, someone whispered. Might have been me, honestly. Aria shrugged, casual as anything. Yeah, I have heard that a lot lately. Funny thing about impossible though. It is really just a word people use when they have not figured out how to do something yet. Aria walked back to her seat, grabbed the coffee pot someone had thoughtfully placed on the table, and poured herself a fresh cup. She took a long sip, made a face like she had just tasted motor oil, and continued. So, like I said, I was the only military personnel on Outpost Meridian. Just me, and I had 300 civilians looking at me like I had all the answers. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Spoiler alert, I did not have all the answers. I barely had any answers. She set the cup down and leaned against the table, her posture relaxed, but her eyes distant. Standard protocol is clear. Evacuate. Send distress signals. Hope someone with actual firepower shows up before you are atomized. Simple, straightforward, utterly useless in this situation. She paused. Our cargo shuttles could not outrun a Titan. Our distress calls would not bring help for at least 6 hours, and 6 hours might as well have been 6 years. Kralovix leaned forward, all 4 arms gripping the edge of his seat. So what did you do? Aria's smile was sharp. I looked at those 300 people, all of them scared, some of them crying, kids holding on to their parents, and I made a decision. Standard protocol could go to hell. My protocol was simpler. Not today. Not today? Torvin repeated, confused. Not today, Aria confirmed. Obliterator-Nine was not destroying my colony today. It was not killing those people today. It was not turning another outpost into a debris field today. Not on my watch. Not on a Tuesday. She pushed off from the table and started pacing again. So I started preparing. And by preparing I mean I did things that in retrospect sounded absolutely insane. Zix clicked his mandibles nervously. What kind of things? Well, first, I went to the maintenance bay and grabbed the colony's heavy-duty work mech. You know the kind, right? Basically a forklift with arms, used for moving cargo containers and heavy equipment. 10 feet tall, reinforced frame, hydraulic limbs. Not a weapon. Not even close. Just a tool for manual labor. Several delegates exchanged confused glances. Then, Aria continued. I went to every storage depot, every maintenance closet, every emergency cache on that station, and I collected every single explosive device we had. Mining charges, welding fuel canisters, emergency breach sealant, anything that could go boom. I loaded all of it into cargo containers and strapped them to that work mech, until it looked like a mobile bomb factory. A Quellan officer raised a tentative hand. Lieutenant, forgive me, but that sounds like suicide. You were going to fight a Titan-class war machine with a forklift, and some mining explosives. Oh, it gets better, Aria said, grinning now. The colony engineer, nice guy named Patterson. He watched me load up the mech and asked if I had lost my mind. Very reasonable question. Honestly. I told him no. I had lost my patience. Different thing entirely. A few scattered nervous laughs. The civilians thought I had cracked under pressure. Some of them tried to talk me out of it. Told me to just evacuate with them. That dying heroically was still dying. Sweet of them, really. Her expression softened slightly. But I explained something to Patterson, and to anyone else who would listen. She stopped pacing and looked directly at Kralovix. Titans have pattern recognition. Advanced AI, right? They analyze threats, calculate responses, execute strategies. They have fought fleets, armies, coordinated military forces. They have seen every conventional tactic in the book. Overwhelming firepower, orbital strikes, massed infantry, siege weapons, all of it. And they have counters for everything. Torvin nodded slowly. Their tactical databases contain millions of combat scenarios. Exactly, Aria said, pointing at him. Millions. But you know what Titans have never encountered? What their programming was never designed to handle? Silence. Aria's grin widened. Confusion, stupidity. One tiny human in a glorified forklift, doing things that make absolutely no tactical sense whatsoever. Kralovix blinked, all 4 eyes. You are saying you fought a Titan-class war machine by what? Confusing it. Not just confusing it, Aria corrected. I fought it by being the single most annoying, unpredictable, tactically nonsensical opponent it had ever faced. Titans expect military responses, organized resistance, strategic positioning. They expect you to fight like a soldier. She picked up her coffee cup and raised it like a toast. I fought like someone who had absolutely nothing to lose and a really bad attitude about being told what to do. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. So Aria said cheerfully, I climbed into that mech, fired up the hydraulics and drove straight toward a 300-foot autonomous killing machine with 47 homemade explosives strapped to my back, and a plan that basically amounted to wing it and see what happens. Someone somewhere in the back of the room whispered, "Humans are insane." Aria heard it and laughed. "Yeah, we get that a lot. Now does anyone want to hear what happened next, or should I just skip to the part where I am standing here drinking terrible coffee while Obliterator-Nine is scrap metal?" Every single person in that room leaned forward. "Please," Kralvik said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Continue." Aria settled back into her storytelling stance, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped another few degrees. Obliterator-Nine arrived exactly on schedule. Punctual, I will give it that. Came over the horizon like a walking nightmare, 300 feet of ancient death machine, energy signatures lighting up every sensor on the station like a festival display. She gestured broadly with her hands, sketching the scene in the air, but started its standard annihilation protocol immediately. Plasma cannons charging, targeting systems locking onto the colony's main structures, shields at full power. Textbook Titan behavior. Efficient, methodical, utterly terrifying. The colonists were watching from the evacuation shuttles, which I had ordered to stay grounded and powered down. If they ran, the Titan would track them. If they stayed hidden, maybe, they had a chance. Zix's mandibles twitched. "And you? Me?" Aria grinned. I was already moving, fired up that work mech, hydraulics screaming, and drove straight at it. Kralvik made a choking sound. "You drove at it?" "Straight at it," Aria confirmed. "Full speed." "Well, full speed for a cargo mech, which is not exactly racing velocity, but still. The point is I was not running away, I was running toward." She paused for effect, taking another sip of coffee. Obliterator-Nine detected me immediately, of course. I showed up on its sensors like a tiny blip, maybe 1/30th its size. Its AI probably took 0.03 seconds to classify me as irrelevant, a maintenance vehicle. No weapons signatures, no military transponder, just a forklift with delusions of grandeur. Torvin leaned forward. "It ignored you. At first? Yeah. It had bigger targets. The colony structures, the power generators, the communication arrays. Those were threats. Those needed to be destroyed. I was background noise." Aria's smile turned sharp, right up until I drove between its legs. The room went silent. "You what?" someone whispered. "Drove. Between its legs," Aria repeated slowly, savoring each word. "That 300-foot monster took a step forward, and I gunned the mech's engines and shot through the gap like I was threading a needle made of imminent death." She mimed the action, hands weaving through the air. Plasma cannon on its right arm swiveled down, tracking me. Fired. Missed by maybe 6 inches. Superheated air, molten rock spraying everywhere. Alarms screaming in my cockpit. I could feel the heat through the mech's hull. Kralvik's 4 arms were gripping his seat so hard, I thought he might break it. And I remember thinking, Aria continued, her voice taking on a sarcastically cheerful tone, "Oh, missed me again, big guy. Maybe recalibrate those targeting systems, yeah." A few shocked laughs, the kind you make when you do not know whether to be horrified or impressed. The Titan's AI recalculated. Suddenly I was not background noise anymore. I was a target, a small, fast, incredibly annoying target. It pivoted, weapons tracking, trying to get a lock on me. She spun in place, mimicking evasive maneuvers. But here is the thing about Titans. They are designed to fight fleets, big targets, slow targets, ships that move in predictable patterns. They are not designed to fight something that is zipping around their feet like a caffeinated rodent on a suicide mission. Aria crouched low, maiming working quickly with her hands. While it was trying to figure out where I was going next, I slapped the first set of explosive charges onto its left knee joint. Mining charges. Military-grade adhesive, set to remote detonation. Stuck them right in the gap between armor plates where the joint articulates. She straightened up, grinning. The Titan noticed. Oh, it noticed. Tried to swat me with its massive hand, the kind of strike that would have turned my mech into a fine paste, but I was already gone, boosting away on the hydraulics, weaving between support struts and dodging debris. Zix clicked rapidly. "How did you avoid its attacks?" "Badly," Aria admitted. "I mean, let us be clear, I was not dodging with skill, I was dodging with panic and adrenaline, and the absolute certainty that if I stopped moving for even half a second, I was going to be vaporized." The Titan fired again, Plasma bolt the size of a cargo shuttle. Missed me by 3 feet this time, hit the ground behind me, turned rock into glass. She laughed, shaking her head. And I swear, if that machine could have felt frustration, it would have. Its AI was not programmed for this. Chasing one tiny target, missing. Recalculating, missing again. I was the galaxy's most irritating math problem, and it could not solve me. Torvin spoke quietly. You planted charges on a Titan-class war machine while it was actively trying to kill you. First set of many, Aria confirmed. And trust me, it only got more complicated from there. Aria started pacing again, her movements matching the rhythm of her story. You could tell she was back there reliving every moment. So that first charge was just the opening move. I had 46 more to place, and Obliterator-Nine was now fully aware that I existed and was deeply offended by that fact. She grinned at the memory. The next 2 hours were, honestly, the most exhausting, terrifying, and absolutely ridiculous experience of my entire military career. And I have had some pretty weird deployments, let me tell you. Krulvix was completely motionless, all 4 eyes locked on her. 2 hours, you fought a Titan for 2 hours. Fought is a generous word, Aria said. More like annoyed it for 2 hours while desperately trying not to die. Tapped and run tactics. Plant charges. Retreat. Find new angle. Repeat. Over and over and over. She counted off on her fingers as she spoke. Second charge went on the right ankle joint. Had to dodge 3 plasma blasts to get there. Third and fourth charges on the lower back struts, the ones that support the main chassis. Fifth charge, that one was tricky, had to climb up on some colony infrastructure to reach the hip actuator. Torvin shook his head slowly. The Titan's AI should have adapted, predicted your movements, countered your strategy. Oh, it tried, Aria said, laughing. It absolutely tried, but here is the beautiful thing, I was not using strategy. I was using desperation and the colony's terrain. She spread her arms wide. Outpost Meridian is a mining colony. Right, which means we have mining tunnels. Lots of them. Maintenance shafts, access corridors, underground passages designed for humans to move equipment and supplies. Small spaces, tight spaces, places a 300-foot war machine absolutely cannot follow. Understanding dawned on several faces around the room. Exactly, Aria said, pointing at them. I would plant charges, then disappear into the tunnels, pop up somewhere else entirely. The Titan's sensors could track me underground, sort of, but it could not predict where I would surface. Could not follow. Could not do anything except stand there and wait for me to come back out. She mimicked frustration, throwing her hands up, and every time I came out I was somewhere new. Different angle, different target point. The AI kept recalculating, kept trying to predict the pattern, but there was no pattern. I was literally making it up as I went along. Zix leaned forward. You were inside a Titan's engagement range for 2 hours. How did you survive? Luck, mostly, Aria admitted. And a lot of close calls that I really try not to think about too hard. Her expression shifted to something darker, more serious. There was this one moment, about 40 minutes in, where the Titan took a step and I was directly in its path. That foot came down, and I mean we are talking about something the size of a building. I boosted the mech sideways, full power, hydraulics screaming. The foot hit the ground maybe 2 meters from me. The impact alone threw my mech 10 feet through the air. She shook her head. Would have been a really embarrassing way to die. Honestly, squashed like a bug. I could already imagine the report, Lieutenant Webb, killed in action by being stepped on. Very heroic. Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Then there was the time, a plasma bolt clipped the top of my mech's cockpit. Superheated metal. Alarms screaming, half my systems offline. Singed my hair too. Smelled like burnt protein for days. She touched her ponytail absently. Needed a trim anyway, so I guess that worked out. Krulvix made a sound that might have been a strangled laugh or a cry of horror. Hard to tell. But slowly, methodically, I kept placing charges. Knee joints, ankle supports, hip actuators, back struts, shoulder assemblies. Every critical structural point I could reach. The colony's chief engineer, Patterson. He had given me a crash course in the mech's design before I left. Showed me the schematics we had on file. Where the stress points were. Where the armor was thinnest. She smiled grimly. And here is the thing about Titan-class shields. They are designed to stop big threats, orbital bombardments, missiles, energy weapons fired from ships, massive kinetic impacts. They are not designed to stop one tiny human crawling underneath them and manually placing explosives directly on the hull. Torvin's eyes widened. The shields could not target you because you were too close, inside their minimum effective range. Bingo, Aria said, snapping her fingers. I was literally too small and too close for the Titan's own defenses to deal with. Its shields were useless. Its plasma cannons could not aim that close without risking damage to itself. All it had was its mobility, and I was faster in short bursts. Plus I had the entire colony infrastructure to hide in. She paused, looking around the room. Charge after charge after charge. 47 in total. Every single one placed by hand under fire, while a walking apocalypse tried to turn me into a small crater. Aria went quiet for a moment, her expression distant. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more reflective. By the time I placed the last charge, I was running on fumes, literally and figuratively. The mech's power cells were down to 12%, my hands were shaking from adrenaline crash. I had burns on my arms from heat bleed through, bruised ribs from getting thrown around the cockpit, and I was pretty sure I had a concussion from one impact I do not even remember. She rubbed her shoulder absently, but all 47 charges were in place. Every critical structural point, every joint, every load-bearing support, the whole package, wired to a single remote detonator that I had jury-rigged from 3 different systems and a lot of hope. Kralvik's voice was barely a whisper. And the Titan. Oh, the Titan was done playing games, Aria said, her smile returning but without humor. Its AI had finally figured out what I was doing. Took it long enough, honestly. It stopped chasing me through the colony, stopped trying to predict my movements. Instead, it repositioned to open ground, away from any tunnels or structures I could use for cover. She walked to the center of the room, standing alone. And then it waited. Just stood there, all 300 feet of it, weapons trained on every possible exit point, daring me to come out. Torvin shifted in his armor. It forced you into a direct confrontation. Exactly, Aria confirmed. No more hit and run. No more tunnels. It was saying, come out and face me, or I will level this entire colony looking for you. And we both knew I could not let that happen. She took a deep breath. So I drove out into the open. That little cargo mech, battered and smoking, limping on damaged hydraulics, came out from behind the main habitation dome and just stopped, right there in the middle of the colony's central plaza. Nothing between me and that monster except empty air and very bad life choices. The room was so silent I could hear the ventilation systems humming. Obliterator-Nine turned to face me. All weapons locked on, targeting lasers painting my mech from a dozen angles. Its main cannon, the big one mounted in its chest, the one that could crack planets, started charging. I could see the energy building, glowing brighter and brighter, could hear it even through my cockpit, this low thrumming sound that made my teeth ache. Aria's hands moved slowly, painting the picture. I had maybe 15 seconds before it fired. 15 seconds before that cannon turned me and everything in a half-mile radius into superheated plasma and regret. She paused, letting the tension build. I sat there in my mech, looked up at this 300-foot monster, this ancient weapon of extinction, this thing that had destroyed fleets and ended civilizations, watched that cannon charge, felt the heat building even from that distance. Her smile returned, slow and dangerous. And I pulled out my detonator, this tiny little device, barely bigger than my hand, homemade, unreliable, probably had a 30% failure rate, if I was being optimistic. Zix's mandibles were frozen mid-click. I thought about all those reports I had read, all those encounters with Titans that ended in annihilation, all those soldiers and pilots and brave defenders who had fought and died because these machines were unstoppable. She held up an imaginary detonator, her finger poised over it, and I looked up at Obliterator-Nine, this towering monument to destruction, with its cannon fully charged and ready to erase me from existence. Her smile widened. Gave it my best smile, the kind of smile you give someone right before you ruin their entire day. She paused, savoring the moment. And I said, out loud, even though nobody could hear me, checkmate. Her finger pressed down on the imaginary trigger. 47 charges. Simultaneous detonation. Every structural weak point, every joint, every critical support, all at once. mining explosives designed to crack solid rock placed with surgical precision at exactly the points Patterson and I had calculated would cause catastrophic failure. The delegates were leaning so far forward they were practically falling out of their seats. The explosions were not big enough to breach the Titan's armor. That was not the point. The point was structural integrity. You do not need to destroy a building to make it fall down. You just need to remove the supports. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. Obliterator-Nine's left leg buckled first. Knee joint shattered, ankle supports blown. Then the right hip actuator failed. Back struts fractured. Shoulder assemblies separated. One after another faster than the AI could compensate. She spread her arms wide, then brought them crashing down. 300 feet of ancient war machine, trillions of credits worth of architect technology, collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. Fell forward into the ground with an impact that registered on seismic sensors 3 colonies away. Aria stood there, arms still spread, looking around the room. Main cannon discharged as it fell, fired straight up into the sky instead of at me. Energy blast shot into orbit. Probably gave some passing freighter the scare of their life. She lowered her arms slowly. That main. Silence. Just complete silence. Except for my mech's alarms, which were still screaming about approximately 17 different critical failures. Kralvix found his voice. Though it shook. The Titan. It was destroyed. Aria nodded. Completely. That fall ruptured power cores, cracked the AI housing, severed every major system. Obliterator-Nine went from operational to scrap metal in about 4.3 seconds. She picked up her coffee cup, realized it was empty again, and sighed. And I sat there in my mech shaking, exhausted. Pretty sure I was going to pass out, thinking, well, that was Tuesday. Wonder what Wednesday will bring. Aria set down her empty coffee cup and shrugged. The gesture somehow both casual and profound. Outpost Meridian survived. All 300 civilians completely unharmed. The colony structures took some damage from stray plasma fire and seismic impact, but nothing critical. Patterson said they had everything repaired within a week. She touched her ribs gently, wincing slightly at the memory. I limped away with 3 broken ribs, second-degree burns on both arms, a concussion and what the medic very professionally described as severe exhaustion and acute stupidity. Took me 2 weeks in medical before they cleared me for duty. Her smile was tired but genuine. But yeah, Tuesday. Just another Tuesday at the office. The conference hall was silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from boredom or lack of interest. The kind that comes from shock, from disbelief, from having your entire understanding of what is possible suddenly and violently restructured. Kralvix sat frozen, all 4 of his massive arms hanging limply at his sides. His mouth was open, his eyes wide. He looked like someone had just explained quantum physics using interpretive dance, and he was trying very hard to process it. Torvin's armor plates had stopped clicking entirely. He stared at Aria like she had grown a second head that was also somehow on fire. Zix's predator instincts had apparently shut down completely. His mandibles hung slack, not even twitching. A Quellan officer in the back row, the same one who had questioned her earlier, raised a shaking hand. Lieutenant Webb, I mean no disrespect, but are you serious? This actually happened. You actually fought a Titan-class war machine alone and won. Aria looked at him for a long moment. Then without a word, she pulled out her datapad and tapped a few commands. A holographic display flickered to life above the conference table. Grainy footage, shot from multiple angles, security cameras, satellite feeds, her own mech's external recorders. The room watched in absolute silence as the recording played. There was Obliterator-Nine, massive and terrifying, striding toward Outpost Meridian, energy signatures flaring, weapons charging. There was a tiny speck, barely visible, driving straight toward it. The footage jumped between camera angles, showed Aria's mech weaving between the Titan's legs, plasma blasts scorching the ground where she had been milliseconds before, her tiny form scrambling up debris to plant charges, the Titan trying and failing to track her. Then the final moment. The mech standing alone in the plaza, the Titan's cannon charging, the detonation, 47 simultaneous explosions, lighting up the display like a deadly constellation, and the fall, 300 feet of war machine crashing to the ground with seismic force, exactly as Aria had described. The hologram froze on the final frame, Obliterator-Nine, motionless, defeated, surrounded by debris and settling dust. Aria closed the display and looked around the room. "So yeah," she said quietly. "I am serious." Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Kralespis finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. You destroyed a Titan, alone, with a cargo mech and mining explosives. And stubbornness." Aria added, "Do not forget the stubbornness. That was really the key ingredient." Kralvik stood slowly, all 8 feet of him rising from his seat. For a long moment he just looked at Aria, this tiny human who barely came up to his chest. Then deliberately he placed all 4 hands over his primary heart in the chromated gesture of profound respect. "Lieutenant Webb," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "I apologize. Sincerely. I judged you based on appearance, on size, on my own arrogance. That was wrong of me." Aria waved a hand dismissively. "Happens all the time. Do not worry about it." Torvin leaned forward, his massive frame seeming smaller somehow. "Lieutenant, how did you survive? I mean, beyond the tactics, beyond the strategy. How did you keep going? 2 hours against a Titan. Most soldiers would have broken, would have fled, would have given up." Aria smiled. That same small, knowing smile from the beginning. "You know what they say about us humans," she said, picking up her datapad and tucking it under her arm. "We are too stupid to know when we are supposed to die." She started walking toward the exit. "And we are too stubborn to do it even when we figure it out." Zix called after her. "What is the lesson here, Lieutenant? What should we take from this?" Aria paused at the doorway, looking back over her shoulder. "The lesson. Size means nothing. Equipment means nothing. Odds mean nothing. What matters is refusing to quit. What matters is standing up when everything says you should stay down. What matters is looking at the impossible and saying, 'Not today.'" She adjusted her ponytail, casual as anything. "Titans are big, intimidating, overwhelming, but they are also just machines, and machines can break, especially when someone really annoys them." Kralvik shook his head slowly. "You are remarkable, Lieutenant. Truly. Just doing my job," Aria said, with a shrug. "Speaking of which, I actually need to get going. I have an appointment." She checked her datapad, frowned slightly. "Titan class showed up in Sector 9 yesterday. Designation Decimator 4. Colony there has about 500 civilians, minimal defenses, same situation as Meridian basically." The room went cold again. You are going to fight another one?" someone whispered. Aria looked up, genuinely surprised by the question. "Well, yeah, I mean, someone has to handle it, right? And I have experience now. Know what works. Should be easier this time." She said it like she was discussing grocery shopping. "Besides," she added, heading for the door, "it is Wednesday. Wednesdays are for Titan hunting. Tuesdays were just the warm-up." She gave them one last wave, coffee cup in hand. "Enjoy the rest of the summit. Try the coffee. It is terrible, but it grows on you." And just like that, Lieutenant Aria Webb walked out of the conference hall, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence, heading off to fight another 300-foot war machine, like it was just another item on her to-do list. The door closed behind her. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Finally, Kralvik sank back into his seat, all 4 arms hanging limply. He looked around at the other delegates, at the warriors and soldiers and combat veterans who had spent the morning bragging about their greatest achievements. "I fought 53 enemies and lost 3 arms, he said quietly. "I thought that was impressive." Torvin nodded slowly. "I held a choke point for 6 hours. Thought I was a hero." Zix's mandibles clicked once, softly. "She calls it Tuesday." Silence again. Then, from somewhere in the back of the room, someone started laughing. Not mockery, not derision. The kind of laughter that comes from sheer overwhelming disbelief mixed with profound respect. It spread through the hall. Nervous, amazed, humbled laughter. Kralvik joined in, shaking his massive head. "Humans," he muttered, "absolutely insane. Too stupid to know when they are supposed to die," Torvin quoted, still staring at the door. "And too stubborn to do it when they figure it out," Zix finished. The holographic footage of Obliterator-Nine's fall still hung frozen in the air above the conference table. 300 feet of unstoppable war machine, brought down by one 5'2" human with a bad attitude in a cargo mech. Just another Tuesday. The end.